I have grown up in a household that endorses the idea of higher education and immediately correlates college attendance with future success. With my parents being first generation immigrants from an extremely low caste background in West Africa, access to education was a holy grail. Thus, being surrounded by various new perspectives of higher education that didn't exactly align with the beliefs I was raised with was just as conflicting as it was eye opening. If the idea that college isn't for everyone was acceptable, what else were you to do after high school? Fortunately, it didn't take much interaction with people outside of my home before I realized the main conflict with this thought process is limitation on higher education and the overt assumption that everyone is there for the same reason. Realistically, it is inevitable for concepts, ideas, and norms to change over time as society improves and people become more competent, higher education being a prime example. College as we know it in the United States has been around for centuries, the very first one being Harvard College in 1636. At the time of its commencement, Harvard College was strictly meant to educate clergymen to become priests or have other religiously affiliated roles. You only went to college if you were rich, white, and male. Obviously, this is no longer the case, and regardless of economic status, gender, and race, higher education is much more accessible to the general public. Therefore, considering the changes in the demographics of higher education institutions, the content of the available curriculum, the significant increase in accessibility, etc., it is senseless for us as a society to keep enforcing one holistic idea of higher education instead of leaving it up to interpretation and evolving alongside the concept rather than against it. A heavily regarded ideal is that a degree will guarantee a high-income career, and more money equals success, which equals happiness. However, there's more to life than work and money, and success deserves a more sophisticated definition. Instead, higher education should be used as an opportunity to discover one's purpose and develop a trajectory for their future. Purpose, as defined by Stanford University researchers, is a stable and generalized intention to accomplish something that is at once meaningful to the self and of consequence to the world beyond the self, which means one cannot simply develop their purpose on their own, but it is essential to have a community, like college, that helps foster it so it can benefit others. Many studies preach the necessity of the peer effect, which is the occurrence of students finding people who share their values or who mold them into their ideal self. Being in an environment like college, not only is accessibility to various types of people and perspectives that may aid in finding your own bubble and interests more convenient, but their influence guides students towards their purpose. As students become more ingrained in their respective social groups and realize which sectors of society their talents are most useful in, it will only increase their chances of success. Secondly, the research has concluded that people, cultivation, affirmation, guidance, and pro-social benefits were worthwhile advantages that students reaped from colleges, which eventually contributed to their post-secondary success and instilled meaning in their lives. Research has seen a dramatic increase in the new generation's prioritization of happiness and self-fulfillment, whereas older generations tend to take a less emotionally involved perspective when it comes to higher education and finding work, creating a sort of disconnect between the generations. The ideologies of higher education can be split into two distinct categories: the practical political view, which essentially holds that higher education should promote an end goal, and the disinterested university that advocates higher education simply for the benefits of pure intellectual exploration. The issue with the practical political view is that it doesn't entertain the beauty of self-development outside of excessive self-interest. If higher education students go throughout their entire experience worrying about preparation for the future, they miss out on the opportunity to simply prepare for life. Thus, to an extent, being disinterested in the societal advantages that come with attending a higher education institution is beneficial and further encourages the exploration of one's purpose. An example of the disinterested view could be first-generation students. Observational studies have shown that the majorities of first-gen students are unsure of what their academic future holds for them and how it would translate into their work life. However, despite that, being able to seize the opportunity of attending higher education institutions and explore their intellectual capabilities noticeably increased their motivation to reach their potential. Because they lacked exposure to American culture's glorification of a degree, their focus on intellectual exploration stimulated their personal growth and self-efficacy. Evidently, as we become well adjusted to the educational opportunities offered by America, the true value of our privileges is undermined, and the vast majority of us often fail to appreciate all of the virtues of education rather than appreciating it for what it is. So despite the restrictive attitude towards education that I was raised to develop through my immigrant parents, to ensure my full exploration and attainment of my life's purpose, I have learned the significance of becoming a bit more disinterested and minimizing my tendency to be focused on the future all the time. We as a society have made it seem like a career is the biggest advantage of education, but realistically, work is not and should not be the biggest part of someone's life. If we do not enforce the substance of college amenities, this absence of purpose will disable us from living in an efficient society where everyone fulfills their potential. Hence, no matter how much you have accomplished academically, it isn't meaningful unless you are certain that it has allowed you to find your purpose.